Hi everyone, welcome back to Gear Media Tech Live. I'm here with Brent Bye.
Hello.
Hello.
Back again.
We have a special treat for you. So during the day, it's kind of hard to do a tour of the TWiT Studios because they're shooting.
They're busy. They're like bees and ants.
They're just busy over there. Yeah. They're doing shows.
I have a really good time lapse of an entire 2 hours of their day. It's really good. Yeah. Slider time lapse. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So so usually can't do that. So we can't do it right now because they're shooting. Mm-hmm. But this morning what we did is we actually went over and did a little tour. Early in the morning. Well, 10. Yeah. First thing.
It's good that they start later because then we don't have to crack a dawn.
Yeah, we didn't have to come in at like 6 o'clock in the morning or anything. So anyway, we came in and we did a little tour so that Brent could kind of talk about some of the thought processes around the lighting and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play that video for you. It's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time. There was something set wrong. It was a very low. We had one person with a Steadicam and headphones, and we have a little bit of clipping in my mic. And I just want to apologize ahead of time because this is a production show that has bad audio.
How did I sound?
What? You sounded great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and that's the most important part because you're saying all the important things. I'm just saying the silly stuff. So anyway, we're just going to apologize. We were going to try to fix it, and we shot it this morning, and there's a bunch of other stuff going on, and we didn't do anything else. So anyway, we're going to watch it, but it's listenable. But you're going to complain, and we know. We know you don't have to tell us. Now, the one thing I will say though is if you're watching this, I assume you're watching this at pixelcore.com/live. There's a question engine. You can go to the question engine. You can ask questions. So while you're watching the video, ask questions. And then at the end of the video, we're going to start at the top of the questions and go to the bottom of the questions.
Most popular, right?
Most popular.
Vote 'em up.
So ask questions. Vote on questions. Yeah. Do all of that. And then what we'll do is Brent is queued. He's ready to go here.
Well, you'll probably have to log in for me, but
So we're ready to look through that and go through that. So anyway, so let's go ahead and queue up the video and play it back. Hey, this is Alex Lindsay, and I'm here with not the Brent Bye. I don't think there's another Brent Bye. There's
probably not
one like
There's
you.
probably not. It's a strange enough name.
So
we've done a whole bunch of work in here.
Yeah, and this is where we do most of our CSIDs and most of our
GM2 Lives, which I've been a guest a couple of those.
Your big class.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
That was so good.
It was so much fun.
So good.
So much fun. And so we thought you might want to actually see Leo's side and really talk about what Brent did with the lighting. I mean, I really think it's state of the art when you look at the price performance, when you look at the control, when you look at all those pieces. It's real. I haven't seen anything else like it.
Well, the beginning of that was they just gave me free reign, complete free reign, and I started right here. I had all these what are called LED park cans, and I just had a stock of them, and I said, I looked at this. This was this translucent. There's 2 layers of this corrugated plastic, which is a major feature when you're down the alley and looking at. We'll see in a second, but. The idea was just, let's make a water-filled silo.
Right.
And so we just simply turned on the green and the blue LEDs on these par cans, the LED pars, and then there's 2 projectors. You can't
Tiny little projectors.
Yeah, and they're like 10-watt LEDs each, and you can't even see them here, because the whole idea about anything that's a particulate, like translucent smoke or water or anything particulate, you always have to backlight. So here, all you'd get is this weird blue glow, right? And it's cool and all, but the idea when you see on the other side is you'll get the effect of the water feature and just this silo of blue. So I started here because nothing was done being built in there.
Right, everything was just a big shell. Yeah. Exactly.
And then the pillars went up first, which were these here. And we had a bunch of different rounds. I almost put those blue and grays on these at first, and I had pink colors. It was just too much.
Right.
So nice, tasteful little Par 20 cans. And these became the night lights. The entire space has them at every corner, essentially. And when it's all dark, they act as the night light. So that was the first thing that we thought about was...
And this is all production management, production...
This is referred to as the production alley. Everybody works here every day.
Right.
And the design here, this was Roger Ambrose's design, echoed the screensaver set with the arches. And originally we weren't going to have them, but we had to find a rock and roll truss company.
And I really want to do it. There's got to be some time when we do a Stargate effect here. Where
that's what, when they were hanging down, that's what everyone that would walk by, they'd see it. They'd be like, what is going on in here, Stargate? But this,
Stargate.
So the water feature, you can start to see what's happening here. You got our nice blue silo. The water feature really works as a backlight. That's what you have to do for anything that's translucent again.
Now, and then this is TNT.
Uh-huh.
So this is, so what do you have here? You have these are image 80s up here?
These are image 80s, and this was a really big challenge. So if you were to sit down, let's say we were to sit down opposite each other. If you sat down here, and if I was in Sarah's seat and you were, Ayaz would be directly opposite me here. The challenge here...
You're using a lot of lipstick, that's all I have.
Yeah, well, The challenge here was compact size. We were really fighting these desks because when they showed up, it was kind of like, wow, these are really big desks. So there was a constant rearrangement of how they would be oriented, and then a camera's looking down this large alleyway, and then we were too close to the brick. And so what we settled on was, I decided to use image 80s, which aren't normally key lights or backlights for humans. And so I built these crates which separate the lights. And if you can tell, I don't know the exposure on the camera, but you can tell that the top bulbs are 32 and the bottom ones are 55.
Now, why did you do that?
At daylight. Well, these are directly opposite. And the crates are keeping most of the light from getting Tom here. So I don't have a shadow much on you. Your key light is coming from a whole separate source here, which is a Parabeam 400. And the idea here with these large image 80s is they throw so much light. You contain them with these grids, and this warm pool actually goes over Sarah and is Ayaz's key light, and the warm pool there is my key light here. And then the bottom half in the grid becomes my backlight at a cooler color temperature, and the opposite there. So it's a combination. It's a cross key and a dual purpose light. It was just an interesting challenge. I kind of looked around here and I said, you know what, it's kind of the only way to do this. And it's a little bit dark when we add a fourth guest, but we'll just be adding stuff. We're always adding.
Constantly playing. This is kind of a work in progress.
Oh, big time, yeah. The other huge challenge was the brick. And
giving it dimension.
Yeah.
The
idea across every set here was warm keys on humans, cool backlights, or white point backlights really was what it was, which would require a cooler temperature light. But then the backgrounds we wanted to have full color scrolling for different shows or content or times of year or seasons, things like that. So we settled on blue for TNT as a standard. And then you'll notice on the bookshelf there's kind of this orangish. So there's actually two levels of color scrolling. When we look at the board later, we'll see the possibility of doing red brick with green bookshelves. Or, each set was really designed for warm key, white point back, and then at least 2 layers of color scroll for elements in the background. But the only challenge here is that you can see the key light down on the ground. The key light washes out the blue, which is just, we separated as much as we could so the blue could be blocked by the bookshelf. But that's just a challenge of space. It was really, really tough. But that's why everyone's so crammed in here. But that's the key that I really wanted to go for here is pools of light that are contained, and they only do certain jobs here and there.
And in a lot of ways, that's really doable in a sustainable sort of way with the LED, because you're able to change the colors, you're able to move them around, so you can change the entire character of the set on a slider.
And that's only been possible in film and TV recently. There were not a lot of LEDs.
Well, that's why I think this is a very state-of-the-art kind of solution, is that we're really seeing this situation where you are using a lot of tools that really haven't been available. And the one thing you notice in this set is that it's not hot. And it's not a hot set. And when it comes to whether you want to be environmental, you want to save some money, or you just want the set to stay cool.
Oh, if I had lit this set conventionally, it would have been, right now we're probably pulling on this set maybe 25 amps, which is, 2,500 watts.
Well, that's tiny. That's a 10.
Yeah, and if I'd done that with conventionals, this would have been 2,000 watts, this would have been 2,000 watts. We'd already gone up to 40 amps right there. We would have doubled our ceiling that we're at right now. And then the background for the washes, they would have been conventional tungsten based.
And then you turn all the AC way up to make sure that it doesn't, that you can stay ahead of it. It's just I really don't, I think that there's a use in big films for hot lights. But I think for this kind of thing, I think that...
No, for something like this, you can control... You have video cameras, you can crank up the gain. They have decent quality with the gain cranked up. And so then we can start to light with lower levels, less light. Start to doing pool sources and really get a feel. The idea... This is the most newsy feeling set. We're actually very evenly lit on this set only, and that was because this was the news set. We said, okay, we'll just throw big, broad sources.
Well, let's go take a look at some of the other sets.
Yeah. The other sets we got to be a little more. Why don't we go to the living room, which is kind of the opposite of that idea. This was the cool part. This is the beginning of the infinity suite of truss.
Right.
And we had a bunch of pieces left over when we did the artistic pieces of truss for Production Alley.
Right.
And so I cut a piece, swept it around, and then I found a piece that was a perfect size to join these two together so that over the round table and the living room set, they just happened to center out, and we just got this nice infinity sweep, which is
very cool.
Which is the basis for all the rigging for all these lights for both of these sets. But this one is, originally we were going to be shooting in this corner. And this was going to be the TWiT roundtable.
But the problem was that it's just
we're looking right into the CEO's office and the sales office with glass. I mean, what are you seeing in the camera now? It's just they're mirrors. So
I'm reflecting on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
And then Leo, we were all talking about it, and Leo came here, and I was showing him some angles, and he turned around and he said, "Oh yeah, what are we thinking? Like this,
And before there was like a set, there was like a whole bunch of stuff here.
Yeah.
That was going to be kind of back end stuff, and it just this makes way more sense. You get to really feel like you're in the set.
So on this set, when we, I believe Leo sits here usually, and then the guests will be over there. Now, this was the idea. It was always called the living room set. And the idea here was, let's do some pools of light. Because let's really feel like we're in, yes, a dark and a little bit of a shadow to a living room, but it's designed this way, And then some of the hosts weren't really happy with the amount of shadows in the original, so I just added a fill. And that can be
what
brought
did you
up
add?
even
That's
more
just a 4x4?
That's just a 4x4 Kino with only 2 bulbs on right now, and then these are Parabeam 400s.
Now, why do you use the Parabeams instead of the Kinos?
Parabeams are Kino.
So, but like, I'm sorry, not the Kinos. I'm sorry. Why do you use the
the
Parabeam instead of like a Diva? That's what I meant.
The Parabeams are more light than a Diva. A Diva is 2 bulbs. It's the same bulbs, right? So a Parabeam.
But like a Diva 400 would have.
But there's no DMX. That's the main reason.
So the Parabeams give you the DMX.
If you look around, everything in here, everything in the ceiling is all DMX controllable. And that's extremely important because one technician, as we'll see when we get to the board, one person needs to sit down, set all the lights, and then immediately go load to video and TriCaster and then double check audio. So it's a really, really daunting job.
Right.
And the idea with everything in here, like a standard Kino Flow 4x4, which is behind this diffusion, there's actually a DMX ballast, which is up there. And I got 3 or 4 of those because the standard 4x4 needed to be controlled remotely from the board. So they just came out with these really nice, really big 4-bank ballasts that are all DMX addressable and the whole deal. So, but this one
for the folks watching, I mean, the people are going to ask. DMX is it's almost like a MIDI interface but it's a basic control that allows you to run it.
It's a remote control protocol.
And it's pretty simple. It's
really simple.
The data is simple, and then you can hook it to sliders, and there's lots of. It's a standard.
Absolutely, it's a standard for a lot, even motion control units, but definitely in lighting, it's an absolute standard.
Right.
And this is a funny bit because originally we were going to take these, and Alex Gumpel, his idea was like, hey, let's just put lampshades actually on.
And then open them up.
And they were going to be, because back here when we see this set, we kept seeing cameras, which is distracting. And I was going to actually light them, but then we just had these stands sticking out of the bottom. So then we started lining up these directly with them behind Leo, so you wouldn't see them. But it was a little tough. And then so now what we do is we just put them on the ground, and or we could move them out of the way.
Well, and these cameras, I know we're mostly talking about lighting, but this is kind of an interesting little rig.
We named this the stanchion.
The stanchion.
And the idea was we weren't going to have any cameras on the ground. Right. We weren't going to do this until I showed him this, which, this is the first camera I rigged was the jib. And so if you go ahead and you can just take that. And it's not really a jib. It's a reverse jib, right? That's what we coined it. But the idea came out of necessity. I needed something to move a camera around an extremely heavy object that I was shooting.
Right.
So I built this with a pivot point over its pivot center, and then instead of putting an entire engine hoist and a 750-pound engine on a turntable in my home studio, I just decided to spin the camera around it instead. So I built this out of necessity, brought it in to just see like, hey, do you guys like this? And with humans and a table, it's a very different look.
And when you have this wide angle, it just looks huge.
Normally a jib is kind of out there, and it's like having your head looking out this way.
Well, we used one of these. We shot a piece in Zimbabwe,
and spin around.
And he had one like this,
Yeah.
except that it was locked, so it didn't lean up and down.
Right.
It would be locked in position, and it was
And then you
about
just
3
spin
times
it.
bigger.
Yeah,
like it was this
I bet.
massive.
Yeah.
What was funny was I just come by and you just go, boop, and just keep on pushing it.
Just
and
go around.
It would just be
Well, the
constantly.
additive with this, with the fulcrum pivot, is
now you really
it turns
have-
your head. It turns the entire set into a gimbal, basically.
Well, and that's what's interesting about it is
Yeah.
that by adding that last little bit, you
Yeah.
really can create these incredible shots, very simply.
And the idea was that someone would you can just lock the focus and the center of attention on a host. If you just basically centered a head here, you can spin that anywhere. You can go up and you can go down, and basically this area, because of the plumb bob point and all that, just remains the center of focus. So it's a really cool, interesting camera for
It's great.
a round table set.
And we're using, these are little G10s, is that right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
Those are the Canon G10s, and the cages that are built below, they house the Blackmagic adapter box, which converts the HDMI to SDI, which then goes out SDI cables to a Blackmagic switcher, which is down in the server room. But the challenge here is really apparent. This was like, of course, the flagship set. And there were a couple evolutions that the key lights went through. We were seeing them reflected. This particular single shot that's the single of whoever, Leo or whoever's in the center chair, was directly reflected in the glass where the mirror or the gear is.
Right.
And so it was just a perfect angle of reflection, right from the key light in the center to there, bam, right in the lens. It was just so I ended up going to a cross key and completely eliminated that and actually picked up. Then this set, of course, evolved, and then the Android show has 2 people sitting opposite each other, so a single key light wasn't as good. So it's just been really cool to grow with them.
Yeah, it just keeps on changing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one of the great things about having everything DMX, everything's centrally controlled, is because that you're not going up there and moving it and necessarily flagging things off or doing whatever. You're up there.
Oh, there's none of that. Yeah.
You're just up there. Okay, well, we'll tune this. We'll make small adjustments and then tune the intensity.
And that required a lot of just complete customization, which is also different because of the permanency. This whole rig here is not only a jib on this mount, but the speed rail piping that goes there, the frame of which became a custom
and
fill light.
This is a pretty amazing fill light here. Yeah. So this is just to bring the audio. This is just to bring the audio up. This is just to bring the lighting up. Yeah. Now, what do you have behind this diffuser?
Above that is another custom Kino Flow that I built with speed rail rig with custom clips, and then I go daylight tube, tungsten tube, daylight tube, tungsten.
And this is an Image 80 up there?
No, it's a custom built Kino Flow. Like I made it out of their spare parts. Like I've done this a bunch of times. It's really cool. I'll document that for something later, but it's a custom potential for 16 tube. They made a 6-foot, what was called the blanket light. And then I just made a smaller version of it with 4-foot tubes. And the idea is that you mix the tubes to still keep warmth, but then when the light's coming in from outside, this particular set, you have a lot of daylight coming in. So we decided the white point of the cameras would be about 48 Kelvin, which would let the outside go a little bit blue, the key lights stay a little bit warm, and then the backlights are white because they are dialed in with LED to be around the 48.
Well, and that's another interesting thing about the LED is that you're not going 56K bulbs or 32K bulbs.
Dial
you're just
whatever you want.
We'll just play
you do need the color meter to hit it spot on and not have a green shift. But that's just a tool for if you're going to do something and be that critical, you would want to have that tool, of course. But that was something that was a requirement here. But when you come in here on Tuesdays and you do Mac break, I'll go to the board real quick, and if you keep a shot of the back wall.
Yeah, watch the back wall here.
So the TWiT, that's without anything, and then if an Android show is there, that's the green, and then the Mac break, we get our purple, and some people would describe that. I don't know if you noticed, but the mid-ground changed as well, where the radios and the telephones, they have complementary colors. We looked at the lower thirds on each of the shows, and I looked at the base color palette of the 2 prominent colors, and then mimic those with each of them, and make it a complementary color. So the Android green has like a yellowish, and that was the cool thing about LED. And I've even gotten some flack from some people who are like, it's just kind of cartoony and looks like it's just too colorful. And it was like, that was what we wanted.
That was
the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
push some buttons.
And let's take a look. There's a bunch of other stuff here that we're running out of time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over here and look at the console real quickly. This is incredible. So this you can rotate like this.
Yeah. So when you're doing the TWiT show, it rotates and the operator faces
And then
whatever
we
show's
have
going on.
so then we've got lighting over here.
This is all the lighting board.
How
and
much does a board like this cost?
This board is actually not as bad as you'd think. They jump up really quick past like $5,000 when you get to anything. This is about $2,000, I think. And there's a smaller one that's about $1,000 or $1,500.
It's a lot of control though.
Yeah. Well, it's only 96 total channels, and with an LED, you've got an RGBW light, which is red, green, blue.
So it's 4
white.
channels for every.
It's 4 channels minimum. Sometimes they have effect channels, and they'll go up to 7. So one light eats up a minimum of 4 channels. But then these boards, this handles 96 total. So I have 160 lamps, more than that actually, and the channels got eaten really quick. So there's a lot of cloning of IDs, and a lot of 3 or 4 lights will all be backlights doing the same colors at a time.
Right.
You just tell one light, you're 35, you're 35, and you're 35, and they will all do the same thing.
Right.
So there's ways to trick your design and your rig.
Right. But we have a TriCaster over here.
Well, when somebody sits down here, the idea is that they go from left to right with their setup. So they rotate the desk towards the set, and they say, okay, today is Android, so we go to the screen. So you set the lighting first, and then you move to your right and you load in whatever virtual footage needs to go in, or you actually load a show each time with the TriCaster. And then you just go to your left and you double check audio and the Skype machines as well. So it was just kind of this nice left to right flow that we're all used to, and it's pretty simple. It was really cool to just sit down with everybody and design.
And then one of the limiting factors of this specific, you have 30 some cameras, and you only have 8 channels in the TriCaster.
Yeah. So every time you sit down and you load a show, you're actually, the iPad is not here right now. There's an iPad, which is just a touch interface, and that's where you patch.
Oh, here it is.
Look at that. Thank you, John. And it's the same for the monitors, where you have your destination, and you'll say, okay, so this monitor number 10, we're going to load it in with whatever camera. You just basically go through the entire matrix.
So you can reroute all the cameras to any of the inputs or outputs that you need to remotely. So it's downstairs doing its own thing.
And then each camera has a number on them.
So you know which camera you're grabbing onto.
So you would know to take 26. This is Eric Lanigan's show, so when we turn the thing around from last night, he's got his camera set pointed at him, and he'd know to load 26 to the TriCaster into whatever input 2 or whatever you want to take it as. And then the same goes for the monitors as well.
Right.
For the Skype avatars.
So all of that runs through the same system.
Exactly.
Right.
So you tap your destination, you find, there's hundreds of inputs in here between the monitors, all the cameras. The switcher downstairs is able to take 72 inputs, and then additional, I think, 36 out, or maybe 40?
I think it's 72 out. I think it's a 72 to 70. John, do you know if it's 72 to 72 downstairs?
72, 148, 4.
Oh, 144.
Yeah, okay.
So
it's
which is really useful. It was funny. We have a much smaller version. We have the 16 to 32.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe they make a 16 to 32. Like, why would you have more? Like that, like a perfect whatever. And what it turns out to be is you want pass-throughs and monitors.
Yeah.
And now it turns out you use it for all kinds of different things. But I thought that I might have been doing overkill with the 16 by 32, and within 2 weeks after it arriving, I'd filled them all up.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing here, is that the challenge really is with all this technology. Every once in a while, the 8 inputs only on the TriCaster, you got the accessibility for all these great shots. You got 30 plus cameras in here, and then all of a sudden you're like, all I can do is put 8. So we've talked about maybe putting an upstream switcher where you could say that one of the inputs you could have a manual override of something, but
and you could do that to some degree here. You just can't do it seamlessly.
Exactly.
So
there'd be a little dip.
Right. So you'd have to do that before you got to something else. Yeah.
But otherwise, everyone that runs this desk, everybody in TWiT staff knows how to operate it. I'm the only one that doesn't right now.
Exactly. I don't know how to operate. I've already been talking. I've been talking about it. I was like, I want to cover.
Everybody sits down here and they're just like, yeah, we can just load in anything, get somebody in on Skype, and deal with any problems. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And they've got aspect ratio squish going on various Skypes coming in. It's a daunting experience, but everybody there is just amazing at it. They just sit down and bam, they go. And this is live shows. Since everyone that tunes into live, you get to see a bit of the setup, but 99% of the time it's up and running in a couple minutes, and there you go. Yeah. The shows are live. So it's been amazing to be a part of helping design everything from the neck up, but just like everything from here down, and what's below here is insane too. There's just 3 server racks and an entire air-conditioned room.
And we're going to have to do that at another time.
Yeah, another time we'll show the guts.
I think we've got to start. They're about to start actually recording now, so we're going to have to stop recording. So thank you so much. And now what you're going to be able to do is ask Brent questions. So we're going to continue this conversation. This is just kind of an open, and we're going to continue the conversation. And you can start asking questions. Use the question engine, and ask us some questions, and ask Brent some questions about how he built this and anything that we might have missed. Thanks. Well, there we have it. I hope you guys enjoyed our little video, our little tour. Thank you very much, Brent, for doing that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to wander through.
Walking around the office.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny because it's really a work in progress. So we can do it in 6 months, and it'll be this is what we changed.
It's every week we could do something like that. Yeah. The updates in TWiT, almost. Oh, interesting.
Bing. Yeah. Bing. Yeah. That'd be kind of fun. Maybe we'll start grabbing cameras when you're doing stuff and just like, what did you do today?
I liked it better when nobody was in there. It was empty.
It was yours.
Yeah. I was the star of the drop cam.
Right.
Hoisting up truss by myself and like just walking around. And people just say they come in, I was just like, I was just looking up. But obviously it's filled out quite a bit.
I think we'll have to do some little videos where we talk about what you've been doing. That would be a lot of fun.
I think just a few questions came through. And
you're welcome, Scott.
Oh, there you go.
You're welcome.
One question says, do the lights have polarization filters on them? The polarization filter is more a camera filter, and it's such that it cuts down reflected or refracted light, and it's generally strictly a camera filter. But there are filters all over all the lights, pretty much everywhere in that studio. The main filters are warming and cooling. If you're familiar with color temperature, we did classes recently, and I'm all about mixing color temperatures. But what happens is you walk outside and it's daylight, seems blue or seems bright and blue, and then you go inside and lights seem warmer and dim. But that color temperature range, there are gels that can let you alter those to finite tuning, and those are called color temperature blue or color temperature orange, CTB and CTO. There are also other CT colors, but when you alter the color temperature, what you're saying to the camera has a fixed color temperature, and like in here we're probably at 6,000 Kelvin or something like that, and all the lights are in that range, so everything is going to look on an average of white, backlights, key lights, all that stuff. But at TWiT we decided to say, as discussed in the video, warm key lights and with a white backlight, which would have meant that the human faces look kind of an orange tone. Then the backlights that come in there have a white point, which matched what the cameras had. And then behind that, we had all these RGB color scrolling lights and also views to outside. So as long as the cameras had color temperatures that were warmer than what was outside, with that lighting setup and that kind of theory across all of the lights in the TWiT studio, we could create warm humans with white backlights and then cool backgrounds, cool meaning, blue looking to the eye. And so to do a lot of those tricks every once in a while, some lights were meant to be a specific color temperature, but you can always alter them with gels. So the long answer to the question, were there any polarization filters on the lights? No. There are many color temperature altering warming gels on lights that had daylight balance tubes to just bring them to a little bit warmer look if they were being used for a key. A lot of times, pretty much the gel I use exclusively.
How much gel do you do with the LED? Because the LEDs are mostly...
No gels with LEDs.
Right, so the whole thing is that's one of the cool things about the LEDs is that you just dial that color in.
Well, color-wise, no gels, but then diffusion is a gel.
Right.
And then, paper diffusion to spread the light, that's a whole other theory.
Right.
But the LEDs, I would use diffusion regularly.
Well, and what's cool about those is that with bulbs, we're always like, oh, we have this one, this one, this one.
Yeah.
And the LEDs are just like, we have a dial.
Yeah, but they're spotty. You know, that's the thing, is that they get in there and they're very, very focused light, because that's what a diode is meant to emit light in this projected pattern. So you average a whole bunch of those together over a distance, it's okay. But when you get closer, you put a diffuser in there. And I haven't really ever needed to do anything color correction wise, because there's color temperature from blue to orange, but there's also green shift from green to magenta in a color wheel. And a lot of times you'll have RGB lights only, RGB LEDs. If you turn on all three, red, green, and blue, you get this purple tinge that we had talked about a couple of times. You can correct that by putting in a green gel. If you want to have a pure white, you could add a green color correction gel, which is going to be a plus green. They're called plus green or minus green. Minus green is a magenta looking, plus green is green. There are varying levels of them in density, half, full, quarter, eighth. And so you could use a green plus green gel, like a quarter or a half, to correct that purple tinge out of a light that is only RGB. That's not RGBW, because the W helps make a more pure white.
Right.
But otherwise, gels.
Now, some of these RGB, some of the LEDs here, though, are RGB W.
Yes.
And so that's all.
And a couple of the big color washes for the brick and for behind the round table set, those are RGBA. So there's
They have an
a red.
alpha?
There's a red, green, blue. Then there's a white, and then the A is an amber, because the white is really a 55K base, daylight balanced, and the amber brings this warmth back, which is nice. But then it eats 5 channels off your board. So
Right, exactly. It's nice
everything
until you
was
have to start
fours,
moving
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Everything was multiple 4s in the board, and I got these couple lights, and I'm like, all these 5s, you know? It's just like, I had to throw out a bunch of other stuff.
We got a question here from Chris Tuttle. Said, how do you wire up the control surfaces and iPad to control the switchers in the applications? That's a slightly different piece, right?
Yeah, so the iPad was used for the Blackmagic switcher.
And that's really a wireless connection. There's
Yeah,
no wiring.
it's a matrix router.
Right.
And so you have all these hard wires coming from each camera cage has an HDMI converter. And so each camera box, as you saw on the drop down, there was an HDMI converter. HDMI comes out of the camera, goes into that box. Out of that box comes an SDI cable. So you got a single SDI cable going up into the ceiling, down something. It goes into this server room below and into this massive matrix switcher, which is just rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of BNC cables. So you plug into, say, 18, input 18. And then there's a whole row of outputs as well. And that's how the video switching happened. And the control surface was the iPad. And it would be awesome if they had a phone one too. But essentially you're on an eye device, and you would select the destination. So the destinations were the outputs, like the monitor or an input on the TriCaster. Those were
here's
outputs.
Here's where I want to go, and here's what I want to send to it.
Exactly. And that's all it is. So on the bottom of that little iPad interface, you just say, send it to monitor 10, which might be a Skype avatar. If we were in a show right here and you were a television monitor and you were Skyped in like Andy does for MacBreak Weekly, they touch, monitor 10
and we have a
send
couple
it to
different routers. So Leo has the big one, or one of, not the biggest. I think the biggest is a 144 to 144, which is
the medium.
This is like
It's the mama.
This is the medium large, because it's like I think that there's so many of them in between.
Yeah.
But because I think this is a 32 by 32. Anyway,
Well, we outgrew that in a week. We had that.
I have the 16 by 32.
Yeah.
And we haven't outgrown it yet, but it's won't take us much longer.
Yeah, you're
and then we also have the 16 by 16. And the nice thing about the Smart Studio Hub, the 16 by 16, is that you can fire all those things up with manually. So you got buttons on the front. Do we have that? Is that connected to anything? Can we bring that out?
The 16 by 16.
And
so the rest of the question there, control of the switchers and the applications, and that was just it. Is that that's the cameras, but then you have Skype or video applications feeding into that switcher as well.
I think it's all Skype now.
Yeah, exactly. In the beginning, video, but we'll see. Maybe they'll resurge. Who knows? But
so this is the 16 by 16, by the way. So.
It's a little guy.
It's a little wee. And what's funny is that when I bought this, I thought that I had spent too much.
Right.
I was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And now, I don't even know what I would do.
Right.
Without it.
Does it have the same option for the touch interface to control it?
Yeah. So you can use it. You can use the touch interface. You can also have it. So you hook this up via Ethernet via USB to your Mac Mini. That's what we have it hooked to.
Okay.
And then you can do it through the iPad. You can do it through the Mac Mini. Has its own interface, which has got more control. It's a little easier to see what you're doing sometimes with the iPad, with the Mac Mini. And then, of course, you can just hit the button. So you can say, output, input.
So manual here, that's what we don't have, because it's a giant, it's like 2 foot by 2. Well, it's full rack width. And then.
And our 32 by 16 doesn't.
Oh, really?
It's just the face.
All right.
with a bunch of stuff, and then you have to control it with the iMac or the iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's the same way.
So this is cool that you have the addition.
That's why we got it.
Manual switching.
We got it for like when we're on the road, and we just want to be able to tie a bunch of stuff together. You know, and so it's 16 by 16, which means if you really pull all your inputs in and out, you really can't do very much. So it's not really built like with a 16-channel mixer like ours. It's not really built for that. But being able to have a whole bunch of outputs and a whole bunch of inputs and being able to glue those together, it's just like a DA. You know, you typically have a DA converter, and this gives you a lot more control. And as I said, this is one of the very, very few shoots that we've ever done is today, where this thing has not got tons of stuff going in and out. And the only reason is because we've got tons of stuff. We're prepping for a shoot in Vegas, and so everything's being run through the bigger one. So so I could show it to you. So anyway, that's but that's the Smart Studio Hub, and we have, as I said, we have the Smart Video Hub here, and then we have the 16 by 32. Leo has the 72 by 144. 44 ounce. It turns out that you think that you wonder why is there a multiple? Like why are you getting two outputs? Yeah. And it's the traditional thing is that every input goes to an output, and then you have extras. And you can reroute them, but what you end up doing is just you got a whole bunch of stuff coming in, you got a whole bunch of stuff going out. It's not connected.
Right. Another question here, lighting and power load, says lighting can play havoc with available power. Yes, it can. Any problems over in the studio with overload or lights that perhaps need to be used alone or with minimal extra requirements from other lighting? Or does this matter? The biggest challenge well, first of all, everything was unconventional. Like conventionals means lamps with filaments with bulbs. And there are varying sizes and wattages. And on the average lighting set, you'll generally, we'll show up and we'll run a generator, and it's generally a 1400 amp generator. So that's, how many watts is that? That's 140,000 watts of power. And we run it up to 1200 amps regularly with large lights. We're using 18,000 watt lights, HMI, or we're using.
Have you seen one of the pictures from Pirates where they had 10 trucks?
Oh, yeah.
10 trucks outside to augment what was already in one of the largest sets in LA. And I was like, that's a lot of light.
Yeah. But in a studio,
Kevin, you have the kilowatt. Can you bring the kilowatt over? Anyway, go ahead.
The size of that studio space, I was estimating when we did it this morning that we would have done 3 times the amount of wattage. It really probably would have been more like 4 or 5 times the amount of wattage that we put. I need to go actually I want to put a Google smart meter on the building, and we could just start figuring out exactly what. Yeah,
and we do a lot of little tests when we're setting stuff up. And one of the things we've gotten into is like with our mobile rigs, we oftentimes need to know where everything's going and what it's doing. And so one of the things you can get is one of these little kilowatts. Yeah. And you just plug
anything into it.
I wouldn't suggest doing this all the time, but if you know that the stuff, you can do it in sections or you can do it whatever, but you plug it in here, you plug it into a breakout and then plug a whole bunch of stuff into it, and you can see what your load is. Yeah. And we do that a lot when we're in locations to make sure that we're not blowing things up. And
well, yeah, you're
because you got little 20 watt circuits, and in this building, I think we've got little 20 watt circuits, some 20 watt circuits. Yeah, you can turn an LED on with that.
Exactly.
20 amp circuits.
My phone blew a circuit.
Yeah, but we can have 20 amp circuits, and I think there's some 30 amps, and
they're generally different voltage.
But they're all tiny.
Amp. Yeah, exactly.
So they're all.
It's just everything. You use a lot of LED light panels or any.
We don't use any more hot lights. Yeah. I looked at some. We were looking at getting some of those big area lights. The long. To light the green screen.
Yeah.
And it's 6,000 watts for
it's a lot.
One light. And I was like, I need 3 of those.
So much heat.
And I was like,
and the color temperature is completely off of what you like to use.
Right.
With blue tubes or green spike for Kino. So it's just a different world. It really, really is a different world in lighting now. It's just, again, that space I would have used 5 times the amount of power, which would have been the amount of thermals that would have been generated in there would be phenomenal as well. So the air conditioning bill on top of that was just
I think for a lot of us who are building studios right now, this is an exciting time, especially if you don't go to the traditional route.
Right.
There are, between the mixers, between the routers, between the lighting, the cameras, the ability to get such a high quality image for so little is just could scare
and then
a lot of people.
At that point it's about shaping it and the quality of light.
We're talking about quality. We're not really talking about quantity anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in the same way.
That's exactly it. Well, the second part of that question was, were there any challenges that we had? And this is the downfall of many LED lights.
And the answer is no. It was piece of cake.
Yeah.
We just threw them up there,
Yeah,
and,
right.
and it was funny. Brent and I spent a lot of time sitting in the living room area drinking beer.
We actually did a couple times, yeah.
and chatting about
mini
life.
Pacificos.
It was like the little Pacificos because he had to stay focused. And
because then you didn't feel so bad. You're like, knock back in 6 pack.
buy 6 of them. Yeah. but the funny thing is that we would we just sit around talking, and then we put up some lights and we go, that looks great. Let's go home.
Yeah.
No,
like the model.
So what were the challenges?
The few, not the few. I did a lot of custom builds of. So you can buy LEDs in ribbons and in bulk, all types of bulk versions of LEDs. And so I did a lot of the ribbons. And directly behind Leo's head, there's a TWiT bug behind his head, the big logo, right? And that's lit by just an LED projector. Then there are 2 lights that rake down on either side of that. But what you see on camera in his single shot and his 2 shot with the monitor, on all the stuff he does from his personal office, the new cottage, there's this wash just behind him that's kind of washing up. And that is a custom, I just bought a piece of aluminum strip and I put an LED ribbon in there, which is an RGB ribbon. And the power source that comes with those, and these are the same power sources that come with a lot of LED Christmas lights, a lot of, there's so many things that have changed to LED. A lot of times there are these little square wave, small little box, and you just plug in a transformer, which is anything that plugs into household 120, and then there's a little 12-volt thing that plugs into this little box, and that box powers the LED.
And the key is that all you need is 12 volts.
Yeah.
It can be any.
But the thing is that these little boxes, the smaller they are, the cheaper the components. And what they do is they're altering, there's a sine wave to power, and then those can be modified into a square wave where it's the analog gets converted to digital, and then it gets chopped off and sampled in different ways to recreate that wave of electricity to make light happen, right? These little boxes don't do it very often, and they just chop, 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 chop. And what happens is, to the eye, you'll even see a little flutter, but on camera, you absolutely see like these strobing and these. So on camera, it looked like these waves of things moving in the background. And the solution was to switch to a DMX and a more pure, basically a higher cost, but not much higher of a cost. It was like a $40 box that was both DMX and better square wave conversion. I used the same transformer that converted 120 to 12 volt, AC to DC. And so that's what you would need to look for is your own custom. You'll see it on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas lights, a lot of the cheap Christmas lights, because they just got this little box, and all little teeny boxes just doing little relay square wave chop offs.
There's some kind of short where you got a geek who wires up their tree, and then realizes that the home movie's not going to work, so they put new transformers onto the Christmas lights, and then work it all out and make sure. And they go in and swap all the bulbs and put some gels on the house.
Well, see, this used to bite us in film. We would shoot day of film, and you'd shoot in fluorescence. Would do this sometimes when the ballast would start to die or get old, or when you're shooting off speed. Say you shot 48 frames in a film camera, music video, and everybody shows up. You spend $120,000 to shoot for a day, and they'd get the dailies back, and they'd be like, that's the look that we wanted. They just have to live with it.
We were shooting in a factory, and we were shooting with a red, and so I was shooting extra stuff with my 70,
right.
And the red was there, and they're both set to 24 frames a second. They're both set to 48, for the shutter. And this was in the South Pacific or in Indian Ocean. And
different power cycles, 50 instead of 60.
And so I'm shooting it, and suddenly I look at it, and I go to full res, and I notice this little lines going up my 7D.
Yeah.
And the monitor and everything's going on, and you don't really see it in the monitor on the red.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's bump in and look at playback, and you can see it on the red too. Like, and all we had to do was change that shutter from 48 to 50, and then it's insane.
Same problem with television screens, NTSC screens, even some plasma or LCDs. But that some cameras have a shutter phase, which alters when the shutter starts within that frame. And that can help it, or they have other ways to just.
And it happens in LEDs all the time. If you're shooting like signs, like at BART, or even like if we were shooting something, we went by the Key Pros, and I noticed that those are so slow.
Right.
Like the LED that you see this, the camera just picks that right up. So what else do we have here? So let's go to the top here and see what we got. DMX. DMX lighting console for using is the ETC Smart Fade, correct?
It is the 4896.
Brent.
Yes. It does one DMX universe of 512 channels. So then you think about, okay, so this board can control. It's called a 48/96 because it has a 2-scene mode where you have 48 physical sliders on this thing. So you could go into a mode, and it's a great console because you hit a button and you get 1 through 48 on these sliders. You hit another one, and then it's 49 through 96.
Right.
So you have physical touch control over all 96 channels.
Which was plenty for what you needed in that other
No,
one.
I ran out quick.
Because we were talking earlier, you had 4 or 5
like
per light.
150 or 160 lights that are all in the DMX string.
Now, what's the price jump if you have to go to something that could handle all of that directly?
So a DMX universe, when you plug in one cable, they're 5-pin XLRs, but they really only use 3 pins. Some equipment is 3 pins, some is 5. It's all the same protocol. But that protocol with one cable is allowed. It can control 512 devices in that particular protocol. But then it requires your control device to also support that many channels. So if I wanted to buy something that could control a full universe of 512 lamps, the price 4 or 5 times. I think the cheapest used board I could find that was a good, plus I only trust, not that I only trust ETC boards, but I was familiar and I had certain things I needed, things to do here. So it was the best choice for the price. I knew I could do
and that's the whole thing is that you get to a certain price where a whole bunch of stuff's inexpensive, and then like, right, you want to add that.
Yeah.
Now
Exactly.
we're going into a whole different world.
Well, I could have bought a $4,000 or $6,000 used board was the cheapest one I found. And it was larger, considerably larger.
Which is a problem because you have very limited real estate.
Much more complicated for the operators. Like this is not interns, but they're, you just sit down and I go memory mode. They know, make sure every button is red, push the red button, and then they're all labeled and they just bring up, a color on a set.
Well, and they have to be that way. I mean, if you look at the craziness that's going on in TWiT, I mean, the fact that you're doing audio, you're managing the Skype, you're doing the mix, you're doing the lighting, all at the same time. And when you first look at that, you're like, there's nobody that can do this.
Yeah.
And everybody at TWiT knows how to do it, except for you and I.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do lights.
You can do the lights, yeah, but we can't do
lighting board in 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that would be. It's really expensive to control a full universe and complex. So I didn't find anything else besides that ETC Smart Fade that I really trusted and was as simple.
Question from Tanner: Are you going to upload the video to the internet? Yes, it'll be up on YouTube within the next day or two. So we're getting better about just posting this stuff. So that video, along with this whole video, will just go up pretty soon.
Rigging trusses, the rigging trusses, originally the designs were for these circular trusses that mimicked the screensaver set. And they were actually a square ladder-based look of truss that the art director Roger just designed that. And they were going to custom fabricate those with a local contractor. And it's very complex to do these 3 arches and tie them together. They were supposed to be aluminum, so they'd be lighter, so that the price was just out of range. And I just started making some calls to some rock and roll truss supply people that I knew and have worked with over the years. And the manufacturer's Global Truss in Los Angeles, but they have different resellers. But they had about 4 different diameters of rock and roll truss that were just ready to go. And we liked the look and the price of, we got a couple full circle radii that matched what the CAD plans were calling for. It was like within 3 inches. So they said, let's just get those.
Right.
And so we got extras. And what happened, the modifications were, it was great because they thought they were going to use a 3/4 sweep for the art design parts, but they only used half. So that freed up 3 sections for me that I could then add to the top. So that was how I had enough pieces left to do the infinity sweep and cool stuff. And the infinity sweep was intended, instead of doing 2 full circles, I had only 2 3/4 circles and then join them together with a straight piece. So it was just fun to say, well, if I just get a straight piece, I'll make a cool design in the ceiling.
And the whole thing looks great. And what's really interesting is not only is the whole TWiT Studios so functional, but it's also just cool to look at. Like everything, all the way up to the grid is beautiful.
I like to sit on the floor and then take photos up because that's my world. You know, I'm just like, you know, it's beautiful up there.
Look at my kids. Look at him. I
Yeah,
remember
everyone's
when
down
he
here
came
talking
in.
about tech and shows and stuff. But look up. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah,
It does. It
very
just
cool.
looks cool. It's a cool environment to work in. Everybody in production alley is under these archways, and that's their office.
Yeah.
All day long, they get to just be in this cool environment, and the editors sit right in front of the blue wash window. And I was like, I was telling them that
You don't let them color correct.
Yeah, exactly. They like it. They say it's calming and soothing. The blue, you know, it's just like we can edit all day long. The magic button. I saw that posting.
The magic button.
Yes. I am going to use the magic button.
So the question is I knew it. I love the Smart Fade series. When programming the memories, did you ever find yourself using the famous magic button? I suppose it would work well for LEDs, but not ballast-controlled rigs.
I was going to use the magic button to program the grand opening party, and I just didn't have enough time to get there, and because you have to turn off everything. I haven't found a blind mode, which means you can edit when you're not affecting the actual lights, but possibly is in there. I just didn't have time to dig through it. But the LEDs, everything is actually controlled through the board. The ballasts for a Kino are all DMX controlled. So the ballasts in the Kino heads, they can be operated by the magic button or any of the Smart Fade controls DMX-wise. For, you know, a Parabeam Kino, just like the Divas, they don't dim to 0. They dim to about 20% and then they go off. But for the effect, if you wanted to make a really cool music video or something like that, we could do it in there. We could have lights flashing on and off. So they'll do on and offs, and they'll do slight fades, and so there's pretty much all the program ability is there.
Right.
So yeah.
Tools. What engineering tools do you use on your computer?
I just use SketchUp.
Yep. I like SketchUp.
Yeah. There's a lot of engineering tools, but you know, I'm mostly in video, so I use After Effects, Photoshop, Final Cut, a little bit of Cinema 4D from time to time, not much. But SketchUp has been rapid previs and rapid design and rapid. There was some pieces I needed to make. It's just so quick to just build something.
That's most of our set designs or plans or layouts almost always start in SketchUp.
Yeah.
Like I just go in and I go, well, now I might take it into Cinema 4D, or I might take it into Modo, or I might take it into a couple different things.
You can build it properly and to scale.
But most of the time, you know, in my new position here, most of the time I just take a SketchUp and I go, and then I send it to an artist and I go, make that work. And so but the fact that you can do that really quickly, I just want to go out here and there's some things about it that drive me a little nutty, but once you get used to, you have to think like SketchUp. You can't think like a 3D package.
Right, exactly. If you're used to something higher end.
Yeah, you have to think about, this is the process of building that. But it's great. Power conditioning for the building. Did you install power conditioning transformers to the building? Did you need anything special to avoid ground loop, buzz, hum in the system?
No, throughout the entire studio, we followed the standard guidelines of separating audio. And we discussed it with the contractors from the beginning. You always separate your power sources from your audio sources at least a foot. But then that got a little bit sticky when all of the audio stuff switched to the Axia console, which is all LAN based. It's all over Ethernet.
Right.
So all the boxes that come in the bottom, they really are together. They're within range, but it hasn't been an issue. We always ran the power cables separate. Right. That was really key, is to always...
and the big thing is you want to have them separate, and then when they cross...
Perpendicular.
Yeah,
exactly.
You just don't want them intermingling.
Yeah. But we didn't do any power conditioning, and a lot of the computers use UPS, uninterruptible power sources, and that was... We even had a whole discussion.
And UPS does two things. It protects it if you have a power outage,
or not, exactly.
But it also conditions because what you're doing is you have a firewall.
You're like running off a battery.
You're running off the battery the whole time. So when you have a UPS, power's coming in and it's doing whatever it's doing.
Yeah.
And especially when you're overseas, there's a lot of countries I've worked in where UPSs are just, that's how you keep. Otherwise, you just change your power supply every year because the power is ranging between 105 or in a lot of cases 210 and 240 and. Going all over the place, and you have to make sure that you figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, a blind mode tip. There you go. Blind mode feature we're looking for is found when using the Smart Fade connected via USB with the ETC Express software. That's very useful. I have that software. Thank you very much for the tip. Let's
The basement. Is there any studios in the basement? There's no studios
know.
there. There's no studios there. We could probably turn it. We could just probably go down there and shoot because it's cool looking. But there's no studios down there.
Yeah, they're not allowed to officially
Yes.
do things.
No.
So far.
Of course, we could store studios.
Yes, we could store. We could store cameras and visit them as we're taking them to store.
I think that while we're visiting them, we could test them. While we're testing them, we might as well shoot some test footage, and then, the test footage turned out well.
If we had a time limit, then we would be within parameters of that non.
We were down there for 5 minutes, and you shot it.
Yeah. I'm gonna run upstairs real quick and then run back down.
Yeah, exactly.
And reset. Something like that.
I think that's. I think we've run to the end of the questions here, right. And it's been. And we want to, definitely. I want to thank Chris Tuttle. Chris Tuttle, in addition to asking a bunch of questions, did the R&D test stream, and so we want to thank Chris for doing that. And we're working on it with BitGravity as well, but we haven't. And we want to thank BitGravity, who provides the streaming that we use every week. And but while we're working through those things, Chris went ahead and went rebel. He went rogue. And I put it up, and we appreciate that. So anyway, next week we are going to take next week off. We're taking a break. So if you're watching this live and you're thinking you're going to come next week,
probably got a job, don't you?
I have a shoot in Vegas. Oh. Vegas, baby!
Just turn on a streaming camera at some point.
You probably could. It's just that it's not the kind of stream that I can make public.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's one of those things. So, so anyway, I'm going to be in Vegas, and but we will be back in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, we are doing Final Cut Studio. So we're going to have Steve Martin and Mark Spencer will be in the house.
Rolled around the vineyards with them just a week or two ago.
Yes, that was quite nice. And so we're going to be back. By the way, we shot the MacBreak Studios live. We're not going to do that again. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and shoot MacBreak Studios, and then we're going to do another roundtable like this, answer questions, talk about stuff. So anyway, stay tuned for that. We got a couple more questions before we leave here.
What is the server workflow at the TWiT Studios?
We're going to save that for another show.
Yeah,
that's a whole the server workflows for both companies. That's
big.
So we'll do that maybe next week or next month or the month after or something like that. Maybe even just a different
There's
episode.
A fun juxtaposition down there of the IT. Calculated slow build out, and then the live video server stuff. Yeah, wires patched everywhere, and the other stuff's all perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're still figuring it out. You're I'm not figuring anything out about that. USB lighting, Brent. I know the last time that you said that USB interface for lighting control. Do you know of any companies? Thanks.
I haven't settled on any companies. There are many USB. It's software based USB. And you can do a Google search and just look by price and by recommendation. I haven't picked anything because I've just always dealt with a hardware-based. But I am going to do exactly that, and I'm going to just do a search for what I would look for is software DMX or DMX software. And generally, they're all going to have a USB interface. And I think there are about 2 or 3 companies. Should be easy to find with a couple searches, but they will have the software and a USB interface. For me, the stipulation was a Mac version. For others, that may not be the case. I know I came across easily at least 2, and I haven't decided on one yet because I've just been doing this hardware so far. So, on to software next.
Yes, and then what is on the drawing board for TWiT Studios? More lighting.
Yeah.
Changing lighting.
They're working on this gaming show.
Yes.
And that's going to be just behind the round table. Mm-hmm. And then an offshoot of that is a whole other video gaming LAN party.
I still think, Leo makes fun of me, but I still think I want to do an Angry Birds competition.
Yeah.
I want to do Angry Birds. I want to do an Angry Birds tournament.
They're going to have volunteers who will be in studio. And so you'll just be able to, that's what the LAN party
I think we're going to do it right there.
Right in here, all right.
We're gonna get some good Angry Birds players.
I'll start playing. I played on an Android phone one time.
I have not. I've been trying to stay away, because the new Halloween came out.
Oh yeah.
In the seasons, and so now there's a whole set of levels that I don't have 3 stars on.
Oh really?
And so, but I'm trying to look away. I'm trying not to look at it.
I'm a cut the rope kind of guy. So
See, I don't like cut the rope. It drives me crazy.
The little guy with the candy. It's funny.
Nah.
angry
I'm an angry
birds.
bird. I'm an
I
angry
got a
bird.
sweet
What
tooth.
can I say? I'm an angry bird.
I like candy.
Brent Bye, where can people find you?
You can find me at oceanstudio.com. That's just a placeholder for my consultancy with TWiT, but there's an email there for direct emailing, and I will be continuing bits of tweeting. At Brent Bye is the way to follow there.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for watching Gear Media Tech Live. Again, we're taking next week off. In 2 weeks, we'll have a Mac Break Studio live, and we'll see you then.
Good night, and good luck.
Well done.
Yes.
Well done, young man.